I'm amazed. This is wonderful. And I'll make a few remarks and reflect the fact that you're here today, and that is very important to us, and it's important to all of you as well. This is not about me, or it's about us all. And it's about, I think, a lot about New Brunswick. I came to this province in '73, and I'm a professional biologist by training, and I went to work in the Department of the Environment. I spent 30 years, almost, not quite, but close, there, working for the Department of the Environment. And I've always been extremely proud that I've been able to work for this province for those number of years. I felt good about it, I felt it, and I was told when I took the job that at the end there would be a retirement waiting, and the government was organized and would do that for me. So that was what I thought, and that was my thoughts as I went through work, but that wasn't my prime reason. I enjoyed the work. I think we did some great things in the Department of the Environment, as I'm sure a lot of other departments and a lot of people, and the teachers and public, the power people, all of these people are what make New Brunswick what it is, and it made it run. It was very important that we had these kind of people. And that is what makes New Brunswick a quality place to live and be. Now, as the years have gone on, and recently, I've always felt that each government that we've had up till now has been behind us, behind me, but behind all the employees with regard to our pensions and our retirement. All of a sudden, I find out that now we've got this new shared risk pension plan thing looking at us. We have the possibility that somewhere we will not have our contracts fulfilled by this government, and that includes our base pensions possibly, and we'll talk about that, and also about our cost of living increases. That is very important to us, and I feel that the way things have been handled here is that they've gone back, they've betrayed us with regard to these contracts, in effect. And they further want to try, as far as we know, to put a piece of legislation into the legislature in this term, and that would actually take us out of the PSSA possibly and place us in another category, the shared risk pension plan, which is, and we'll talk more about all of that as we go along. So that's very important that I feel this government, this is the first government that I've been around that has betrayed our trust. And I believe they certainly have, and they have no right to our pensions. We earn those pensions. They're our funds, and they do not have their right to, they have any right to them. We are members of the public sector retirees. There are about 30,000 of us that involve various sectors of the public sector retiree program. And out of the 30,000, if half of those people, another half, will be spouses and people connected with us. So we're talking maybe 60,000 people. And then there will be children that are associated. Many people will be associated with us in this economy. We're not isolated. So we think we represent about 75,000 people. We know in the province there are about 450,000 adults that vote. Half of those people vote. That means from 450,000 down to 225,000 that actually do vote. And then if we have 75,000 people, we're running about 1 in 3. So we are a force to be contended with here, dealing with this issue. Don't think we are not, because we certainly are. The other thing I want to point out to you here quickly is that this movement that we're in, that we're working on now, the fact that you're here, I don't know how many are here today, but this represents a lot of what happened in Fredericton. A month ago, we had nobody, or very few of us at that point. And we started in Fredericton the same way we are here. Soon, we went to 50 people at the first meeting. And then we discussed this with them, much like I'm discussing it with you here now. And soon we had 250 at the next meeting. And this thing is just growing. And if we didn't have credibility, if this wasn't real, or if it was small, this wouldn't happen. This is important. And we know, too, from the number of people that are going to our sites and relating to us and connecting with us on email, that this thing is starting to expand. So you're a part, a very important part, one that is essential to taking care and protecting our pensions. The first question I'm going to ask you is, do you want to protect your pensions? And the answer is yes. And then the second question is, when do we want our pensions protected, Mr. Premier? Now. Okay. So here we go. First time. We're going to do this 3 times. Do you want to protect your pensions? Yes. When do we want our pensions protected, Mr. Premier? Now. Do you want to protect your pensions? Yes. When do we want those pensions protected, Mr. Premier? Now. Last time, do you want to protect your pensions? Yes. When do we want our pensions protected, Mr. Premier? Now. Right. Okay, Clifford, where are you? Thank you very much.
You old buggers don't want to die. That's what Sue Rowland said. Don't want to die more. The coalition represents or encompasses PSSA members, teachers, UNB, NB Power, and others. It's not just the PSSA retirees. The coalition is much broader than that. And we in the coalition don't only care for ourselves. Naturally, we're concerned for our pensions, no doubt. But we're also concerned for those that are still in the public service and are going to be impacted by this, some in the near future, those that have 25 and 30 years of working experience and haven't retired yet, and those that are just starting. We're concerned for New Brunswickers. We're concerned for the whole population of New Brunswick. But we have something that is absolutely critical, which is us right now. So what's our goal? It's to call on Premier and his government to honor their long-standing commitment to the retirees. So who are we? Now, Bill touched upon it a little bit. I'll go in a little bit more detail. We're approximately 30,000 of the public sector pension plans. It includes widows and widowers. And we all have employment commitments that we have met throughout our careers. We've met our obligations as part of that employment agreement or contract. Every 2 weeks, we paid into the superannuation plan. We fulfilled what was demanded of us as part of our obligation for the superannuation. Did you know that the average PSSA retiree, we're just using that as an example, the PSSA retiree, the average is $21,000 a year. And for the widow or widower, that's 50% of that. What does our pension include? Guaranteed base benefits, a 2% per year indexation, and it's to the cost of living, to CPI. And our cap is anywhere between 5 and 6%. And there are those who are part of a pre-retirement package, either VER or WFA, workforce adjustment. And it's guaranteed for life, and it includes the spouses. For us, we agreed, and it was part of the commitments that we made, it was going to be integrated with CPP at age 65. What's our fears? That the new model is a done deal. There's been absolutely no transparency, no dialogue, no consultation, no data, ask anyone for information, either from the task force or government, and their mum. The answer is no. You ask for the assumptions that were used, the answer is no. We have seen no information whatsoever. We have no voice. We're not represented by anyone but ourselves. There's been a huge breach of trust between government and ourselves. We have been deceived by the Premier. And this whole model is a one-size-fits-all. It discriminates against retirees. It's basically an expropriation of our rights. And there is definite potential for reduction of our base benefits. If there's any indexation, it'll be conditional indexation to 75% of CPI, Consumer Price Index. And the worst thing is the fund, the sinking fund of over $10 billion will not be under the perusal of government. There's no more guarantee. And there will be new governance in place. And we do not know what that entails or who it will entail. And naturally, no provincial guarantee. What's our demand? Honesty and respect. Fair and equitable treatment. An open process. No backdoor deals. And definitely not a one-size-fits-all. What's our demands? Guaranteed pension with indexation to CPI. Cap of 5 or 6%. No more, no less. That's the deal. The new model, the shared risk on a go-forward basis. We are demanding that our plan be grandfathered. And basically, a deal is a deal. But there's been some flip-flopping by the Premier. And I'm going to read quotes from the Premier himself. In May 2012, when the shared risk model was announced, the Premier stated, "We understand that each pension plan must be carefully examined and evaluated on its own terms, and this shared risk model is not a one-size-fits-all." On February 20th, 2013, at the National Summit on Pensions, the Premier stated, "Fortunately, the unions did understand, and the campaign to educate retirees." I didn't realize we needed to be educated, but anyways. The campaign to educate retirees is ongoing. At the end of the day, this is the best model for New Brunswick. We don't buy that. Not for the retirees. On a go-forward basis, we understand that there are issues as it pertains to the pension liability with the province of New Brunswick. Absolutely. But we're retired. We have absolutely no means of catching up. We have no means of going out and getting employment and gainfully paid what we are due. Not at this state or stage of our life. So, from a call to action point of view, you've all been asked to sign a little sheet. I don't think we had enough little sheets. There are more people here than we anticipated, so Glen did a superb job in getting you people out, and his committee, and the people that work together to ensure that you'd be out here this morning. There is a website, and it's called Pension Coalition NB. So www.pensioncoalitionnb.ca. You go on there and you can register under Create an Account. You create an account and you put in your name, address, telephone number, email, you set up your own username and password, and then you're registered within the coalition on the website. And just because you did it here today on paper, do it on the website also. It's very important. Thank you very much.
I'm going to try to keep my remarks very brief because I think the important thing is for us to give you an opportunity to ask questions and for us to provide as many answers as we can. And I find it unfortunate that we have to play that role. I think it's something the government should have done a long time ago. It should have had regional town hall meetings across the province for people that are directly affected by this. And I don't think it's reasonable that they're meeting with a small group of bargaining agents and sharing with them information, having discussions, and that type of thing, but they're not willing to do that with a large stakeholder group like the retirees who don't have union representation anymore. Yeah. Glenn just asked me to remind myself to introduce myself. I recently retired from the government in December after 35 years. I worked in various departments. I worked in financial services and human resources, and the last number of years in the pension and benefits administration and that type of thing. So I know this stuff, and I have a colleague, Cyril Theriault, who's not here right now, and some of you may know Cyril Theriault, have seen his name, and he's a very knowledgeable person. He's quite involved, and he knows a lot of the history about these pension plans, how they were designed, how they were funded, and some of you may have seen some of that material that Ernie McKinnon, the former CEO of Investment Management Corporation, put forward. And part of that, what we're trying to do is provide you with factual information. We're not trying to alarm people. We're trying to provide facts and correct information and to balance some of the things that the task force may be saying. And for example, in the budget speech yesterday, Minister Higgs, who's from this neck of the woods, indicated that there's resistance to change. Well, we've never said you can't change things. We said you should change things on a go-forward basis. And that's where our position is. And he indicated that the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan CEO was quite impressed with the progress that's being made here in New Brunswick. But what he failed to explain was that the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan changes were on a go-forward basis for future service. They didn't affect people who'd already retired. And there's a big distinction between that. So that's what we're trying to counter, is provide that correct information. We're sensitive to the financial situation of the province, and like everyone else, we're going to pay increased income taxes. We're going to pay sales tax. We're going to pay property tax. But I think it's unfortunate that they want to single out the retirees for a disproportionate impact to balance the deficit. And I was reading to Clifford and Bill on the way down. In November of 2011, the Telegraph Journal, in a local opinion piece, editorial piece down here, had indicated that the City Council should change the pension plan to change career average from high as 5, increase contributions, change the pension plan for current workers, but they should not throw the retirees under the bus because they're the least able to deal with the financial implications. And that's the same position we're holding here right now. Now they touched on a couple things, like your current provisions are your base benefit. That's what you currently get month to month now in your pension. And that includes any inflation indexation protection that was already granted to you. That's called your base benefit. They talk about a thing called ancillary benefit. That's your future cost of living allowance or indexation. And those two things are basically going to change a little bit under this new model. And a third piece is, under the legislation, these two plans, the teacher's pension plan and the public service pension plan, are legislative pension plans. They're not negotiated. And in fact, under the Public Service Labor Relations Act, we were prohibited from negotiating any terms on our pension plans. We just had to make our contributions. So there's a big distinction, and I want to raise that because there's two pension plans for the acute house workers and the certain bargaining employees, which covers the nurses and special health care workers in the hospitals. They've adopted the new shared risk pension plan. That's fine. Those were negotiated pension plans. The government didn't have any liability related to those pension plans. And in fact, for the nurses, they've negotiated a benefit improvement on a go-forward basis to offset some of the changes they're going to deal with. But we don't have that opportunity. So under the new shared risk pension plan, the task is telling you that upon conversion, your base benefit won't be reduced. The important piece to remember there is upon conversion. It does not mean in the future it can't be reduced. And they're trying to say it's 97.5% probability that it will not be reduced, but there is a possibility for it to be reduced. And your future indexation, they say that it's going to be 75%. Well, right now, you have the government backstopping their obligation up to 5% or 6%. And in the future, she says that's going to depend on the performance and the funding ratio of the pension plan. And it's based on this Dutch model. Well, if you've done some recent research, the Dutch model, last year, their fund had 13.7% return. But the administrator has decided, because of the funding ratio, their pension is going to be reduced by 0.5% in April on your base benefit. So they're not going to get any indexation in Holland this year, and they're going to have a reduction on their base benefit, and they're being told there could be a further 1.6% reduction next year on their base benefit. So that's the degree of uncertainty that we're concerned about, and I think it's unfortunate they're not sharing the information or telling us how they're trying to mitigate these kinds of risks. Now, Clifford talked a little bit about the sinking fund. In fact, there's two trust funds, Trust Fund number 4 and Trust Fund number 7 for the public service plan and the teacher plan, that come to about $10 billion. That's not government money, that's trust money for the beneficiaries. It's something we contribute to, they contribute to it, part of our wage package. The rest of it are investment returns. And since 1996, the Investment Management Corporation has exceeded the requirement for the actuary to fund these pension plans. So it's not a performance issue. And one of the concerns I have is that once this money, what they intend to do is transfer the money to a new board of directors that's arm's length from government. So the government will not be the guarantor or won't backstop the financials of these pension plans. It'll be up to this separate board of directors. Where are they going to put the money in terms of investment? Is it going to be with Investment Management Corporation, which is a crown corporation, which has done their job, and they do this at a low administrative cost? Where is this going to go? They'll have some autonomy to make decisions around this stuff. So it's that degree of uncertainty. We don't know, how many members are going to be on this board of directors. Are the retirees going to have representation or a voice? And how effective is that on a go-forward basis? I also wanted to point out that, I do think the goal of trying to expand pension coverage for people is a noble goal. And it disturbs me that the task force person is trying to pin, the public service retirees against private sector people. They're trying to pin us as retirees against the active people, and that's not the goal. That's not what we're saying. We're saying, for example, there are other changes that are going to occur to the pension plan. For active employees, the age is going to go from 60 to 65. If you take an early pension, the actual reduction or penalty is going to go from 3% to 5%. Instead of being based on your final 5 highest years' salary for your thing, they're going to do an career average. And the reason I'm raising those other changes is because they say we're living too long. Well, the public service plan was valued at 90%. Now, if you applied that mortality table, that dropped it down to about 84%. But what they didn't say was if you go to a higher retirement age, 65, and if you go to a career average plan, and if you change the penalty, that will improve the funding level because they offset some of the other factors. But they don't talk about that. And it's unfortunate that the two pension plans that were probably the worst off from a funding point of view, the acute house workers and the nurses pension plan, they negotiated a deal with the province. And yesterday I looked at the financial statements or the new budget, and the acute hospital pension plan from a budget expense point of view went from 13 million to 33 million. So if the goal was to try to reduce your pension expense, they just added $20 million to a pension plan where they had no legal obligation to do so because it was already at arm's length. But it appears our plan, which was actually better and more well-funded and managed, we're going to take a bit of a larger risk. And they basically, the reason the government wants to do that is they want to have everything on a defined contribution accounting basis. They make a contribution to this arm's length board, and that's their responsibility. They don't have any further. So it's not really a shared risk. The risk is going to be borne by the people in this room. And you need to understand that. It's important. But anyway, I want to just close my remarks before we get to questions about some of the legal considerations. And Clifford touched on that a little bit. But the way we look at this is an employment contract situation where when you first joined government, you were made an offer of a job with certain salary and conditions and benefits. You accepted that offer. You performed your functions and your duties to your contract. this is the payment that's due. These are deferred wages that you're entitled to and owed. So it has employment contract law arrangements in there. The other part is the trust law. That trust fund, the $10 billion I talked about, there's a fiduciary responsibility of the government to the beneficiaries of that plan. They can't just take that money and do willy-nilly what they want with it. There's also, under the Charter of Rights, which supersedes all legislation in Canada, the Supreme Court of Canada has already determined that under Section 15, seniors and pensioners are a vulnerable segment of society and they can't be discriminated against. So it can't have a disproportionate impact on retirees and pensioners because an active employee can still negotiate, rather than getting deferred wages down the road, I want more wages up today. And recently, for example, the nurses just negotiated a new collective agreement with the government for 4 years, I think somewhere around 8%. So they're able to negotiate something today versus getting something down the road for tomorrow, and they negotiated a benefit improvement in their pension plan on a go-forward basis. The retirees didn't get any improvement in that pension plan. And I think the other case, which I'll want to close on, is there's a case called Quinn versus New Brunswick. And Quinn refers to Marilyn Quinn, who was the president of the nurses union. She was also the chairperson of the Certain Bargaining Employees Pension Plan. That plan, as I mentioned earlier, had a large funding problem. And so they went to the courts to ask the courts, and this was the New Brunswick Court of Queen's Bench, Judge Grant here in St. John, to ask what authority they had to make benefit reductions, or if they could touch retirees, or if they could ask for in contribution increases. And the task force chairperson, Susan Rowland, was actually the lawyer of record for the Certain Bargaining Employees Pension Plan. She went to the courts, and they basically, the pension plan and their legal counsel said that they represent the retirees. Well, Judge Grant said, with all due respect, no, you don't. And he stopped the proceedings and had them hire a separate legal counsel, a person by the name of Ayer Kaplan, to represent the interests of the retirees, to make sure they were looked after. And as a result of that, he made a decision, which is in the Court of Queen's Bench decision in 2011, or 2010, sorry. And he said that when people retire, their rights and benefits vest with them at that time, including the cost of living allowance entitlement. So there's already a legal decision on that case here in New Brunswick at the Court of Queen's Bench. So we've tried to raise this, and we've sent off a couple letters confidentially to the Premier saying you should be aware of these legal precedents, and we're not trying to be confrontational. We could be supportive on a go-forward basis of changing the pension plans. Everyone recognizes we probably have to make some changes, but you can't disproportionately impact the group of people that can't offset that, not unless you all want to go back to work. And you can't go back in time and set aside money to have the markets work for you. That doesn't work when you're retired. And I don't know if you guys had a chance to participate. There was an electronic town hall, and Susan Rowland has indicated there's three groups of people. There's the folks that are at home that are quiet, they're content, they're not writing, they're not complaining, they're happy with everything. There's a second group of people that want more answers. They're trying to respond to that by putting information on the website. And she says, and some of those people have come up and thanked her after the town halls. And I thought, what town halls is she referring to? Because for the public service, there was 1 hour electronic town hall meeting. We had to phone in. And there was one in English and one in French. That was it. There was no opportunity for anyone to go up and thank her physically that I know of, unless she's talking about City of St. John or City of Fredericton or whatever. But City of Fredericton, I don't know if you saw this week, they've adopted the plan, but the firefighters and police dug their heels in and said that City Council cannot impose that model on them. They want to discuss and negotiate that. And we're wondering ourselves as a group how the retirees in those groups are being looked after, or who's looking after their interests. And that's not clear yet. But the last piece I'll talk about is that part of some of the pension plans that people receive come from two pots. One is charged to the pension plan, and some of it is charged to the consolidated account if you went out on an early retirement program through workforce adjustment, early retirement. You may see that on your T4s or on your... That stuff that's there is not coming out of the pension fund, so we're not sure how that's going to be handled. Is it going to be handled consistent with the change to the shared risk plan? We don't know that, and that's another one of the problems. They're not providing enough information for people to be informed on this stuff, and it's disappointing.
To pick up on a little bit of what Brian said, if I am to believe the Premier's pension guru, who obviously has his ear, Susan Rowland, I am addressing a room full of high-priced retirees from Fredericton who were senior civil servants. That's what this is, isn't it? Well, if she's got that part wrong, imagine the rest of the story. And there's where she tends to be going with this. A pension expert who has isolated one thing, pensions, and gone off and got the government completely off its game in bargaining. In bargaining, the government never talked about one single thing. They talked about total compensation. They recognized that there were some things in terms of compensation that might be better than other collective agreements, but there were also things that were worse than in other collective agreements, and there were also some things that are about average. So simply cherry picking one thing tends to be completely counter to the way that government had approached total compensation. And when I say government, I'm including people under the PSSA, which is beyond government. You can probably tell from the colors that I'm wearing. How many of you remember those wonderful 0 years? I used to negotiate on behalf of UNB with support staff, and from time to time the province would hire me to be its spokesperson in conciliation, so to represent the management at that stage of bargaining. Do you remember those wonderful 0 years, what you were told? Among other things, yes, maybe your neighbors are getting an increase and you're not, but look at what you've got. And one of the things they always pointed to was our pension plan. You help us now, we'll help you later. And why not? Whose money is it? It's deferred salary. It's not their money that they're taking away from us. It's our money that we trusted them with to do something with. So the government tends to be thinking that this is all a bunch of people from Fredericton. It's not a St. John issue. Not at all. It's a bunch of whiners from Fredericton. So I thought, I spent a long time living in St. John. I had the dream job for me. I worked at UNB Human Resources, dealing with both campuses, UNB SJ, where I went as a student. So they're ignoring the fact there's UNB involved. There are a lot of NB power workers, a lot of retired teachers. Look at some of the bigger government departments in St. John, like social development, health, Ridgewood, and so on. WorkSafe NB, the number of DOT retirees and employees. Energy now, there are head offices here. There's a university here. Yet the government does not think this is a St. John issue. So tell me, is this a St. John issue? Yes. Yeah, I think it's a St. John issue. I remember growing up in St. John, and my grandparents had an apartment on Union Street, right across from the Golden Ball Garage. And every now and then, I would be in that front window looking out on the street, and I would see a very distinguished-looking gentleman go to work in the Golden Ball. And when you grew up in St. John, you couldn't help but be aware and influenced by the Irving influence. And one of the things, and I know a lot of people had a lot of opinions on the Irvings, but one thing they never said was the Irvings welched on a deal. They may bargain hard, but a deal was a deal, their word was their bond, and with Mr. Alward, I don't know what a deal is. We had one with them. Reputable people don't break deals. Call your MLAs. Make sure that they know, A, this is a big issue, it's a local issue, and it's an issue of integrity. And if you can't trust the people to make decisions on one thing, it's really going to be a concern with what they do on other things. I tried this summer, I had an email exchange with Sue Rollins, and it sounds, and I'm sorry, it sounds like we're picking on Susan Rollins, and maybe that's not fair. Sure it is. No, hang on. I kind of admire Susan Rollins because, Barry? Yeah. Holy crap, it's been decades. I kind of admire Susan Rollins because she is the most influential outside advisor to a premier of New Brunswick since Malcolm Bricklin, so you've got to give her credit. I tried, because I think this is such an ethical, moral issue. People who work, done what they were asked, were given not just promises, absolute carved in stone commitments on their pension, left, and you're going to take it back. So I wrote to her this summer and said, if you put the retirees in the mix, this is probably the third, I had set it up, said if you put the retirees in the mix, it will throw the government off its game. So what's happened? Now existing employees have an issue. Doctors, in the budget speech, talk about how they're going to help recruit doctors. Sure, a whole lot of doctors are going to want to come to a province that breaks its promise to former employees. I mean, they've created all this other problems. But I raised it with her, and the response that I got back was pretty well ignoring what I had to say. She reminded me of Union General John Sedgwick in the Civil War, when a sentry told General Sedgwick, "Sir, please get down, there are snipers over there." And the general responded, "Nonsense, they couldn't hit an elephant at this distance." Thank you.
My question is, your literature, hi Brian.
Hi.
Your literature talked about a potential impact on death benefits. Do you have any information on that?
As a primary employee, you would get your pension, and there's a spousal benefit. It's normally 50% of that. Well, the spousal benefit is an ancillary benefit that's provided for under the legislation. We don't know how that's going to be handled with a new arm's length board of directors. They're going to have to set up their own funding policies, risk management, and so it's the unknown.
Good morning, my name is Debbie McCormick, and I really don't have as much a question as I have some other comments. I am not an economist by any means. My husband will tell you I don't go near a checkbook. I am a retired public health nurse. I did take a look at the Dutch model, and I looked at what they were looking at, because what I wanted to know was, when is the plan going to be in deficit? When, like, it would be nice to get some specifics. So they had a surplus. They looked at about 130%, and when the plan dropped below 100%, we went into deficit. So I made a call to Fredericton, talked to some of the HR people under the PSSA plan, and I said to them, do you have those guidelines? And I was told that they are still working on the specifics. It'll take about another 2 months before they can come up with that type of information. And I said, well, then how can you ask us to look at this plan logistically if we're not getting that type of information? The other thing I asked was, you look at what we pay for our health premiums every year, and we're all told that those premiums haven't been changed since 2002, so get ready for those to be increased. I tried to find out underneath the Dutch model what pensioners paid for health, because you can't look at this pension reform plan in isolation. You have to look at all of the other variables that go along with the economy and also along with the other type of social programs that they have. The other thing I said was that if you look at the feds, my son-in-law works for CSIS, there's been some new federal reforms. The pensioners were not included. It was from a go-forward basis. And last but not least, the nurses under the CBE plan. I was talking to my friends that are still working, because I was public health, it was PSSA. They said the retirement allowance is not being eliminated. If you look at the budget that came down, the public service is going to lose the retirement allowance. So these are some things that I think that we have to keep. What I did say to the government when I was talking with them, you may think I'm invisible because I'm a senior, but I'm not.
Hi, my name is John Sheehan. I'm a retired teacher principal, and I have a couple of comments and then a question. One, I was looking at the Dutch model as well since the last little while, and last year, back up a little bit, there's a very good site. It's called European Pensions. I recommend going there. It has a lot of details about different pension plans in Europe, one of which is the Dutch model. And in the Netherlands, there are many pension plans that operate on this model. And the article that I was reading recently indicated that last year, in 2012, there was a decision made with the Dutch bank that employers, or that the pension funds' base benefits could be reduced by up to 7%. And there wouldn't be anything that pensioners could do about that. 7% is a lot of money. And the majority of the funds have not had any cost of living increases for the past 7 years. Some have, but the majority haven't. That's 7 years. So much for, and that's not up to 75%. That's zero cost of living. And the other thing about those funds is that funds have to be funded. That's the actuarial evaluation that is done regularly that will be done in our plan, that is done in our plan, that has been done there as well, that no ancillary benefits will be given unless the funds are funded to 105%. And I'll tell you right now, the teacher's plan, my understanding is it's around 95%, which is very healthy compared to other plans across the country. So those are the comments that I'd just like to share with you based on what I've read recently. And the question I have is, we all know, and we've heard horror stories about private pension funds closing, going into insolvency, companies going bankrupt, and the terrible impact that has had on retirees in the private sector. My father-in-law just took a 30% hit after 20 years of being retired. He was in the pulp and paper industry, and I know many, many other people in the pulp and paper industry that have taken huge hits. And we're not talking cost of living. We're talking base benefits, 30%. So my question is that in those cases, those pensioners went to court, and they tried to find out what their legal standing was. And in this country, those private pension plan closures really recognize nothing for pensioners. Pensioners are the last creditors, and there was no legal standing at all for the people that I know. My question to you is, how is our legal standing different than private pension funds that have really devastated private pensioners? Thank you.
I'll comment on that one there. And I think initially the Premier had indicated this pension design is not one size fits all. And under those, like Fraser and NACWIC and some of those pension plans where those individuals had a reduction, in some of those plans, the employees there did not make contributions to their pension plan. It was totally sponsored by the employer. And the task force was actually brought in to deal with that private sector stuff to try to protect those situations from never happening again. And so in terms of a shared risk pension plan going on a go-forward basis, that might make sense to apply that to the private sector to provide greater protection, because those plans were subject to the Pension Benefits Act, and they were subject to oversight by the Superintendent of Pensions. Despite that, those individuals, like you described, took a hit on their pension plan. Our situation is a little bit different because the Public Service Pension Plan and the Teachers Pension Plan Act presently are not subject to the Pension Benefits Act. Ours is a separate piece of legislation, and we have a trust fund of $10 billion. It's not held by a company that can go bankrupt and put that money out to creditors. So what we're trying to get across is it's not one size fits all, and it's not appropriate, I don't think, to make those decisions without some kind of representation and involvement. And it's unfortunate they're trying to pin us against those private sector examples. I think it's terrible what happened there. But to tell us, well, we're going to put you under the same regulatory regime, the Pension Benefits Act and the Superintendent of Pensions, where that already happened, and you should feel more secure. I'm not feeling secure.
I'm Roger Savoy. I'm a retired teacher from St. John, and I had a question regarding other provincial employees and their pension plan, namely our beloved MLAs. How will that affect them?
I love this guy. I was hoping someone would ask that question, because we've had an opportunity to even talk to some of the caucus members in Fredericton that are on the Progressive Conservative side, and we met with the Liberal caucus to inform and educate them about our concerns and try to give them some information. But one of the things I told them about their own pension plan, and Sue Rollins says, for example, in an electronic town hall, that the MLAs have already adopted this plan. They may have in theory, but in practice, they have not adopted the plan because they have to. Theirs is a legislative pension plan, and there's been no legislation passed changing their pension plan yet. Another big issue is that they do not have a pension fund. So I'm not sure how they're going to turn money over to an arm's length board of directors to manage on their behalf, because it doesn't exist. It's charged to the consolidated account on a year-by-year basis. So that tells me they'll probably continue to cover the MLA's expense costs, charge to the consolidated account, and be the guarantor of that pension plan for themselves. Now, for the active employees, they're going to face an increase in contributions from, say, 6.1 to about 9%. And for that, they get a 2% per year benefit. And when you reach 65, your CPP is integrated in your pension plan, so your total pension income goes down and you get your CPP. Well, for a MLA, they'll contribute 9%, but they get a benefit of 3% per year. And when they get CPP, it's stacked on top of their pension plan. It's not integrated. So what I was trying to tell them, don't get up on a podium and preach to me, because it's apples and oranges. So if you want to get down to the same level, then we can talk. And I personally think, I don't know how they're going to think about it, because they're saying their indexation is going to be conditional based on the performance of the fund. Well, if you don't have a fund, how can you determine it's performed well to give you indexation? So that means they're going to. So are they going to pick another fund as a proxy to say, well, we'll use another fund to determine whether? So if I'm going to retire MLA, I'm thinking, how's this going to work? But anyway, it just shows the difference there. Hope that answers your question.
My name is Cheryl Robertson. I'm a retired from paid work educator, I call that. And half my pension almost comes from the teacher's pension plan, and the other half comes from the public service superannuation. So I have double whammy concern here. I wanted to share this because I had occasion to meet with one of the cabinet ministers on Monday, the MLA for the area where I live, and I was there on New Brunswick Community College business. And David, when you're citing all those important institutions, in every region of the province there's a New Brunswick Community College too. With a lot of retirees, and some of them are here today. So pensions came up. It wasn't the real reason I was there, but pensions came up at the end of the meeting. And before I had any chance to say anything about my concerns about public service pensions, Minister Fleming waxed quite eloquently for several minutes. And the first thing he said was, it's not a done deal. And he kind of thumped the table. It's not a done deal. So I quickly interjected, well, I'm very glad to hear that, Minister. And he went on to say, please share that message with the people you talk to. So what better opportunity than to share it today? So the message I got from that was, I found it encouraging that probably there is an opportunity for us to continue to mobilize around the province and to influence whatever decision is yet to be made. He said they had very vigorous conversations about this around the cabinet table, and arguments on both sides were presented. But he reiterated 2 or 3 times, it's not a done deal. So I felt that should be shared here today. Let's keep their feet to the fire on this one.
It's very important that you reach out to other people who are not here. And I think it would be important for you, if you know anybody in the active civil service, they're going to be impacted because they're going to retire at some point as well. I think it's unfortunate there are 7,000 non-union employees who have got no information the same as you, and they're going to be impacted in a big way. So Cheryl's right. You should take the opportunity to try to reach out, because Sue Rowland thinks that silence is acceptance. And that's not true. I think your attendance here today and coming out on a miserable day is a good indicator of that. So please reach out and make it known. But I was a little alarmed because in yesterday's budget speech, Minister Higgs laid out a framework that shows they're starting down the path to change the Public Service Superannuation Act. He talked about an extraordinary, unusual, one-time hit of $110 million in the budget. Well, that is related to wrapping up this plan and moving into a shared risk pension plan. What he didn't say, and what they didn't disclose, is what is the hit when they do it to the teachers. And I think it's going to be triple that amount. So some of those facts will have to come out in the budget. Are there more questions?
Richard Thorne, just a retired teacher. My question is more of a technical question, in the sense that when we retired, we all were taken, I gather, or called in with Human Resources, and we signed a contract at that point which dealt with the nature of our retirement, including the nature of our death benefit, because our survivor benefit, because we were offered a number of options, whether we wanted to have a 100% survivor benefit for our spouse or whatever. And so you elected things, and you also looked at the nature of your severance, et cetera, and then we signed that. Does that document have any legal force?
I would agree it does have legal force. It's the same as people that were given an incentive to leave the public service early. You basically had to sign a document indicating your intentions and what your choices were, And I think that's another example of a contract employment document that supports our position. This is a contract of employment. And if you breach that, then, I think Susan Rollins may have indicated to one group in Fredericton that met with her that they may just frustrate the contract and have you sue for damages, and you have to demonstrate what those damages are. Well, that wouldn't be our strategy. Our strategy would go forward to try to quash the legislation, repealing our pension plan, because I think what the game plan eventually will be is to repeal the public service superannuation plan and repeal the teacher's pension plan from legislation and create a new shared risk pension plan under the Pension Benefits Act, and want to move you without your input or choice to that new plan, and move your money that's in a trust fund to the administration, this new board of directors, without your input. Get registered on the website, and there's a Facebook account that's there, and that's starting to become, if you know Facebook, you have grandchildren or children, that thing spreads like it's unbelievable. So, yep. So I think it's important that you do get involved from that point of view, but I think you need to write to your MLA. You need to, they have constituency meetings on Mondays. You need to get in line to say, we need to talk to you, just like Cheryl did, and ask those questions, because I think they're gauging how much interest or resistance is around the province, because the Fredericton MLAs say you've got to get your word out around the province, because their colleagues in the PC caucus that are outlying areas, they're not hearing anything. We'll see. But to me, that's where they've got to hear you.
Can I just quickly sort of back up or piggyback on one of Brian's comments about the MLAs? We not only met with the Fredericton MLAs, and as Brian noted, the opposition, and on Thursday we're meeting with the leader of the NDP party at his request, and but we have also reached out to other caucuses within the government. And I had a very nice and long telephone call from Glen Savoy, who's the MLA for St. John Funday and chair of the St. John group. And he said he will take the request forward because they have to agree when the regional caucus meets on how they will spend their time. So he was certainly supportive of meeting with us, and he will ask his colleagues. So I can't reiterate strongly enough to get to those people. I was very encouraged by Cheryl Robertson's comments about Mr. Fleming. I had him in my bad books. But keep on. And it's particularly important here because we hope to be meeting with the regional caucus in early April.
I spoke to the executive of QP and I spoke to the executive of the IBW just to get a feel from them. And all the different unions have a different approach with the government on this. Some of them think, we can buy into it because they have their own reasons to do it, and others say, well, I'm not sure. So, frankly, the people that are still working that still have unions to support them, the unions are talking on their behalf. I can't speak specifically about the teachers union, for example. I know, but I expect they're behind closed doors. They're dealing with the government on their own, and they may end up buying into it and getting something out of it. Because we know, for example, when the nurses signed on, they actually got something out of it. And some of these unions too, the thing that I'm not speaking specifically of the teachers, but some of them, which I didn't realize till I went through this, I knew nothing about this pension stuff other than I just wanted my pension like everybody else, But I found out that every agreement and every pension is all different. Sometimes some union, for example, would say, I want money up front for my employees. I want to get a little bit higher hourly rate or whatever, and I'll take a little bit of a cut back on the pension side of things. I found out the other day, I didn't realize, for example, like the city of Fredericton, what they had, they capped their cost of living increases to 2/3 of the cost of living to a maximum of 1%, but they did that quite a while ago. So they're all different is the problem. So the union guys tend to be being looked after through their own unions. You probably got something else to do.
Yeah, I'll just make a few comments there. I think it's part of their strategy is to separate and divide, and they're meeting with the small group of bargaining agents, and some of them are groups like the NBU, the Brunswick Union, and the Brunswick Nurses Union, who've signed on those two hospital-based plans. They're trying to get them to be proponents to help support and push the other public sector unions to agree to adopt this change. Now, personally, I think the Teachers Federation has been very helpful. They've been able to provide us with some meeting rooms, and they're aware of our efforts, and they know they're going to have an opportunity. They're also quite vigilant about what we're doing because they're also under a legislative pension plan. And I was talking to Clifford on the way down. I said it's important, I think, that the teachers stand together with us as a public service pension plan because we're two legislative pension plans. Because personally, the other legislative pension plan besides the members or MLA's plan is the judges. And I don't think they're going to take on the judges. So that tells me the judges are going to stay on the books. The MLAs is probably going to stay on the books. The ones they're trying to move off the books is the public service and the teachers plan.
I'm Barry Harbinson, and I'm the chair of the pension committee for the New Brunswick Society of Retired Teachers. I just wanted to let you know that the NBTA have not completely cut us off. That I am in contact with Larry Jameson frequently. He does take a look at some of the articles that I have been doing. I'm working on something called talking points. So when you're writing, calling your MLA, there will be information to keep in mind. And if you really want a bit of encouragement, Dawson Murray is being called out of retirement by the NBTA.
Hi, Barry. I'm Glen, by the way.
Just one other thing. For those teachers here who are not members of the Retired Teachers Association, especially now, it is important that we speak with a strong voice. And we certainly are very supportive of our brothers in the PSSA, but we also need retired teachers to be a member of the Retired Teachers Association, because we need to be able to say we are speaking for all retired teachers.
Yesterday, when I was in my automobile, I was listening to 88.9 in the afternoon, and the talk show there, his big thing is pensioners are selfish because they refuse to share with everyone else. I'm wondering if we should respond to these people or just ignore them.
I don't know if you heard that answer over there, was just turn the dial. I like that. We've been battling this for some time because we know we're not going to get any sympathy or empathy, and it's unfortunate some of the media, I think, have tried to pit us against the private sector. We're saying, look, we're not against the private sector. I think it'd be great if there was broader pension coverage for those people that don't have pension plans, and I think they should move in that direction. I think it's interesting to note that the task force came forward to try to deal with stuff like that, but the private sector has been slow to take up this great new shared risk pension plan. The only group that I know is I think the pipe fitters took it on, and the Co-op Atlantic, I think, has adopted it along with the two city governments. But other than that, the private sector has not, come flying to the altar here to adopt this new pension plan. So I see that, but the point I think we also need to make sure is that, we're not trying to pit ourselves or be selfish. We're saying that we're just like if you were a private company that provided goods or services to the government on a contract basis, they would pay you. We provided our services on a contract basis, and we want to be paid. It's simple as that.
Yeah, the question was, are there talking points for all of us that need to talk to people, when you're talking to whether it's the MLAs or whoever you're speaking to? And I guess my comment would be there's a lot of information on the website. We've adjusted it over time. It's not perfect by any means, but it is quite good. So if you had a chance to look at the www.pensioncoalition.ca.
There's actually, if you go on that website, that's why I say it's important, there are actually 3 sample type letters in there that you could use or pick information out of it to use. And the other thing about being on the website, it gives you a portal or an opportunity to ask further questions, because we know some people are shy about standing up and asking questions, or drive home and said, I'm a senior, I just remembered I should have asked this question. Well, you can ask that question online, and we'll try to get back to you and provide an answer, unlike the government.
The website is www.pensioncoalitionnb.ca. And on there also there's a link to a web or a Facebook. It's in the papers that came out as well. And there's also a Facebook site that Debbie, I believe her name is Frost from Merrimack, she set up, which is kind of nice. And there's information that they put in there. There's one point I want to really make. There's 2 or 3 things, if you don't mind, it won't be long. In one of the pieces of paper that came out there, there's a note that says, here's the amount of money you're going to lose if you're making $21,000 a year, and it has 75% on it. It was the reason that was prepared, and by the way, that's a minimum amount. That's based on government numbers, because we've had these comments from different people that's supposed to be in the know that says that that this is a good deal for you, you should grab it and all that. But the numbers that the government gave us showed that even as a minimum, that we're going to lose something. And when you look at that, a $21,000 income, you're going to lose $40-some thousand over a 25-year retirement life. So there's real dollar, and that's the minimum. That's assuming we still get a 2% cost of living and everything. So, and the things that are at risk, and just in case anybody's confused, your base amount is at risk, cost of living is at risk, your spousal, if you know, like I say, when I pass away for my wife, that's at risk. So everything is at risk, and don't think that you can trust that if somebody says, you know, kind of trust me, don't trust them. And I'm just going to I'm going to reinforce a little bit what Brian or somebody said here. And here's how, I got to be careful with what words I'm using here because I see it's being taped. But there are some words, like the government has got on some question and answers in some of their documentation. And they say things like, they say benefits and monthly pension payments are not being reduced as a result of the conversion to the new model. And some people will read that and they will think, well, that sounds all right, that's great. What Brian said earlier, just to reinforce it, what that means is the day of the conversion, there won't be a reduction. But to me, it's really dirty. The next day after that, I tried to find information from the government. I said, I want to know how much money, when you are going to raise the retirement year, the age, and you're going to increase the amount you have to pay into it, and there's a whole bunch of things, 8 or 10. I'd like to know how much money is the government going to save from this, and they said we don't know. Now, is that ridiculous or what? And so we went in under, and the coalition, and through their chairman, he's went in under the Rights to Information Act. They've asked for all this information. Now, I kind of have a feeling they're not going to give it to us for some reason, but we've had to ask for that. There's been a number of things that's going on, and I'm not going to take too much of your time, but I want to just tell you that there's been a lot of work going on, and we know all the calls, and everybody's meeting the MLAs and all that. The approach we're taking at this point as the coalition is, if you have any questions around what to do, we're continuing to put political pressure on the MLAs. That's our goal right now, and that's our focus. And just to repeat what they've said, and that means writing them, but also means standing in line. We know when we met with the PC caucus in Fredericton, they were actually, and people have told me this, a number of them, they had their whole day booked aside to meet with people like us. That's what they've been doing, the politicians, and that is making a difference. When we met with them, they're feeling there's some cracks starting to develop. We know that we've got to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. If you know, by the way, anybody, because we want to work on like Woodstock, Miramichi, Bathurst, and the North Shore, if you know someone up there that'd be willing to help, and we're not asking for a lot of help, it's just like what Roger and Debbie and others did here, you know, and Barry I've been speaking to a lot, that kind of thing. In the other areas, just email somebody in on the coalition, we'll get the information so we can actually kind of get that together. If someone is getting a pension now and they're a widow, are they at risk of losing their pension, or what amounts and all that? The answer is, I'm sorry to even have to say it, they are at risk. And Brian wants to say something before I say something wrong, I guess.
Yeah, I think we have to be very careful here, because we need to strike a balance that we're not alarmist or putting out not factual information. I don't think any government would ever take away something that's out there. But what he's trying to indicate is the rules and policies around how things are constructed or dealt with are unknown to us in this new board of directors. So, you know, like the 21,000 is a perfect example, and that number comes from the financial statements of the province. So a 50% spousal benefit would be half of that amount. But in the future, they would be impacted just like anyone else about indexation, or if there's a reduction in the base benefit. So those things could possibly happen. But I don't think they would ever take away something that's already been put in place. I wouldn't go that far.
The problem is they have not told us what the rules are. They haven't told us anything about it. We can't find out anything. And frankly, at this point, I don't think we want to know. We just want what we got. We want to keep it.
So as communication member of the committee and co-chair, on the sort of the political action part, we need you. We're only as strong as each of you will be. We need you to contact your MLA. We need you to write letters. And yes, it's difficult, but don't be worried that you have to have a whole bunch of facts in your letter. Just say you're pissed. You know? Just say you don't believe that this is what should be happening to you. The basic line is you had a contract. You got a salary, but they took part of that salary back as a pension. And that was your money. And that was in your pension plan. That's yours. And you want it. And you were told when you came you had a salary, a pension, and benefits. And that's the package. And we want it. That's all you need to say. But the thing is, just the basic thing, we had a contract. It was made of a salary, a benefit, and a pension. And we want it. We want you to honor it. And that's all we're asking on a go-forward basis.
I'm Russ Hatt, formerly MB Power. I just retired January 1st. But while I was still working last year and this all came to light, the government was using on not only the Dutch model, but they were talking about Australia. And Union President, our business manager, Ross Galbraith, did a whole bunch of research, and the IBEW put out a pamphlet about and they looked at the Australian model quite intensively. And when they went, Australia moved to the shared benefit plan, and what it did is eventually people ran out of money, pensioners, so they ended up being cared for by the Australian welfare. So and what it was in this pamphlet was Australia was moving back to the other pension plan that we now have because it put more stress on the government than what they had before. So, I mean, they're trying to sell us a bill of goods, and I don't buy it for a minute.
My name's Al Roast. I'm a retired teacher. The only thing I'd like to encourage people to do is, I think it's nice to speak to your MLAs, but I think one-on-one, I think you'll find many of the MLAs will tell you what they think you'd like to hear. I'm not as optimistic as the previous speaker who said he gave me his word. You know, the 3 great lies: I'll respect you in the morning, isn't that a lovely baby, and I'm from the government, I'm here to help you. So, but if you're going to take the time to write a letter, the first person I'd write would be the Premier, and I'd ask for a reply. I'd go right down the list, the MLAs ask for a reply, and I think if enough people with all the other meetings you're going to would do the same thing, either by mail or email, and wouldn't it be nice if their emails couldn't handle the input that we have that we could put in? And I think that's the type of thing, because really the MLAs will have a say, but I think it's going to be the senior bureaucrats, the Premier, we know his word is his contract. We've heard that today. Therefore, we have to remind him of that, and just don't do it once. Once you reply, send another short little note, and always put on the end, a reply is requested.
We appreciate, by the way, all the donations that everybody's given today. If you're still would like to give donation and you couldn't do it today, you can go online. You can do the PayPal and all those kinds of things. It's there. It's straightforward and certainly appreciated. Just so you know, you may wonder what are we going to do with the money, that kind of stuff. We've spent a few $1,000s so far on some advertising and on the website and that. And we appreciate it. Thank you very much, everybody. If you're not sure what your MLA emails are, it's on the website.